Welcome to the Green Building Show, where we investigate green design and building trends throughout Australia.
Throughout January, we're taking a close look at colour trends, and I'll be speaking with someone who's very well known in this realm. Her name is Sibella Court, and she's an author, interior stylist, colourist and shop owner. And she'll be explaining how can we go about creating our own colour trends that suit the way we like to live. This week on Australian Style, I'll be speaking with architect Michael Green, and he's going to explain the challenges of creating a lightweight and sustainable two-storey home on a steep block. I'm here today with Sibella Court. She's an interior stylist, she's also a shop owner and a colourist. Thanks for being with us, Sibella.
No problem.
So here we're talking today about colour trends for 2013. Can you give us a bit of an idea? You know, what is something that people need to really consider when they're creating their own colour palette within their home?
I'm not a big believer in trends. I think you can come up with your own colour palette. Every person has their own colour palette, and it's just a matter of looking around at the things that you have at home. It might be a dress that you buy in a colour that also is something you have in your jewellery, or you might have pieces of paper or invitations that you've collected that you don't want to give away. But once you start looking at all your things, you can put them together and notice that there's a common theme that you've been picking out over the years, and you'll actually realise that you have your own colour palette already, and it already exists. And these are the colours that make you really happy, so you should surround yourself by them in your home as well.
Okay, but how do you really tap into that, your personal colour palette, as you put it? I mean, is it possible to get colour really wrong? Is it just, should you be looking at something that you just really like, what really stands out to you, or you should be paying attention to something a little bit more subtle?
I think you go for it. There are no rules. There's no rules, particularly with colour. Whatever makes you happy. It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks about it. If you walk in a room and it makes you smile, well, there can't be anything wrong with that. The beauty of colour also is paint is not expensive. It's something you can make a mistake with and you just paint over it again. So it doesn't matter, and you should just go for it. Don't be scared.
Fantastic. And you said earlier that a lot of your inspiration comes from travel. I guess what's the underlying theme for the Australian landscape, do you think?
That's one place I don't travel to very often. I try to, but not very often. Look, Australia is so diverse. I mean, I was in Broken Hill recently, and it's a completely different colour palette to what I was experiencing this morning at Bondi Iceberg. So depending if you want to pull a palette out of that and recreate it in your home, or you can use overseas travel as an inspiration. I travel the world looking for inspiration and write books about how to pull colour inspiration from your travels.
Okay. And what kind of impact do you think a colour or your colour choice can actually really have on the look and feel of your home?
Oh, it's enormous. I think people are too shy to use colour a lot of the time, and they play it safe by using all the neutral tones, but I want to see people using a lot more colour. Okay,
so getting practical now, what kind of advice could you give to someone who's got, say, they've got a plain white room, say a living room? Mm-hmm. Where would they start? What do they do?
For me, I'm really into dados, and if you don't know what a dado is, it's when you can use a different application, whether it be wood panelling or a paint line that you paint to a certain height. It's usually around the 1 metre to 1.2 metre height, and I love painting a coloured wall just to that height that surrounds the bottom of the room, and I think it's a great place to start.
Okay, and what sort of effect does that give?
It's probably a little bit of a commitment phobe thing, so you don't have to commit to painting the whole entire room. It also leans away from the feature wall, which I'm not a big fan of, but it's able to put colour into a room with not having the whole entire room in a really bold colour, but it is a good application, so you can use something brighter that you're more comfortable with, and then you can layer and texture with your furniture and your soft furnishings and your lighting and all that kind of stuff.
Great. And you said earlier that you don't tend to follow the trends, you tend to create your own trends. Mm-hmm. What kind of advice can perhaps an amateur colourist tap into that?
Well, I think it all goes back to this sort of 10 colour palette theory, that I believe that everyone has their own colour palette. And if when you're putting one together, and once you do look around to your own things, you also notice that there's a lot of neutrals as well. So there's neutrals with brights, and you can really mix them up. I think, look, trends have their place because it also makes different products available on the market. So you can be swayed by it, but also the availability of that product can then be brought into what colour palette that you want to be working with at that time.
Okay, great. I remember back when I was little and in art school, or in my art class, there was this big wheel on the wall, and it had, you know, the colours and the correct contrast. So you're saying there is no rules when it comes to colour, or
yeah, I don't go by the colour chart. No? I don't own a colour chart.
Right. So how do you know what goes with what?
My big thing is, you know, when I'm designing my paint range, I come out with 10 new colours every 3 months. And when I'm putting a palette together, I often look to nature. And if nature does it, well, that's going to be okay. So whether you're looking at at the feathers on a bird, or how a leaf looks when it's during the fall, you know, you get all the red tones and the oranges, or you even look at, I don't know, the bark of a tree. There's so many things in nature, or shells, anything. If there's a colour combination in nature that works, you're pretty much good to go.
All right, great. Okay, so we just want to find one piece of walkway advice. If you were, say, on stage with all these hundreds of people hungry for some ideas about the colour palettes in their own home, and you had 20 seconds to tell them one piece of advice, what do you think that would be?
One piece of advice, I suppose it's going back to not being afraid. I know a lot of people suffer from sort of a lack of confidence. They're too worried to do it. But one thing that I've found is when I've had assistants working on shoots with me or on my interior spaces, and I say, just quickly paint that wall, and they're a bit nervous, but then, you know, you quickly mark it up with tape, and you paint it, and what a dramatic effect it has, and what little time it takes. And if you don't like it after a couple of months, you can just paint it back to another colour yourself. So that would be my biggest advice, of don't be scared and just go for it, particularly when it comes to paint.
Sibella Court, thank you for your time.
Thanks so much.
So it's all about colour trends this week, Vic. What's hot?
Colours. I was thinking today we might talk about orange. People don't usually, the last colour people usually think of putting in their home is orange, but if you just want something a little bit unusual, there's awesome orange products around, and the ones I'm going to talk about right now are also pretty cheap. You could just do something really simple like a tangerine salad bowl. This one's $39.95 from ecobella.com.au. This is a very cool kind of retro bread bin. It's called the West Coast Single Grandy Bread Bin, and it's from ziggiziggy.com. Also very cool from Ziggy Ziggy is this confetti pedal bin in orange. Really nice here is some, and again, you know, I love the recycled upcycled, this great cushion. It's called the Caravan Orange Cushion. It's from ecochic.com.au. And this is not very classy, but it's very cool. It's an orange toilet brush, and it's pretty fab. It's from England, bhs.co.uk.
I'm here today with Michael Green. He's the principal of Perth-based architecture firm Collaborative Design. Thanks for being with us today, Michael.
No problem at all.
And today we're talking about the Holloway residence, which is a lightweight home you guys have built in Narrabeen in WA.
Yep.
Can you tell us what was the brief from the client, Michael?
Well, basically the client had been holidaying down there for quite a few years with their family. And they actually had contact with a local builder down there who recommended us for the work. And the brief was basically that they wanted a house that was very different to their house in Perth. They wanted a holiday house which had a much more relaxed feel and was suitable for the context and the climate down there, and was easy to live in and worked well for a holiday house.
Okay, great. And what were the major challenges with it?
It was actually quite a difficult site because it was quite steeply sloping up from the road, and they were also very keen to keep as much of the vegetation as they could, so we sort of did quite a bit of work on site, actually mapping where trees were and working out the best sort of site for the house. they also were keen to use lightweight materials and to actually design a house that had low embodied energy and also minimised waste.
Okay, so it was actually the client who was the catalyst for the use of lightweight materials?
Yeah, they I mean, not directly, I guess, but they actually, as part of that initial brief that I spoke about, where they were very keen to have something different from their own home in Perth, which was a pretty standard brick and tile house, they were very open to different types of materials, and also with their brief to have something that suited the context and the climate, it seemed most appropriate from our point of view to be using lightweight materials.
Okay, great. And I guess what benefits of using lightweight materials is there for the local climate?
Well, I guess down there, and in our climate generally, we generally feel that with our climate, there's a requirement for either reverse brick veneer or lightweight construction is the best option, and that's really to shade any thermal mass that you do have in the home, so that we don't have the heat gain that we from our hot summers.
All right, great, Michael. And what was the reaction you got from the client when they saw the finished product?
No, they're extremely happy. I mean, they came down quite a bit during construction. They were quite involved because they spent quite a bit of time down in the southwest, and yeah, they're very happy with the result and have enjoyed it since. So.
Michael Green, thank you for your time.
Thanks very much, Carl.